Page 79. The classically liberal macroeconomic idea behind privatization is that the state lacks both the competitive drive and the profit motive that inspire innovation, lower prices, and improve service. The reality has been far different. Across the globe, municipal and state governments play a smaller role in providing services, from electricity to road repair to prisons, than at any time in the past 50 years. Yet the price of a local call, a kilowatt of electricity, or a liter of water is higher than ever, eats up more of consumers' paychecks, and draws more consumer complaints. Water privatization in England and Wales in 1989 produced rate increases of 46% when adjusted for inflation, and the number of shutoffs grew by 200%. In Peking, a town in southern Illinois, the price of water has increased by 204% in the 18 years since the water plant was sold to a subsidiary of American Water Works Incorporated. Multinational firms have raised Nicaragua's water rates by 30% since 2000. Rates for water have increased by 200% in Saudi Arabia and by 87% in Brazil since 1997. Pressured by the World Bank, Bolivia sold its state water system to a consortium of British investors in 1999 for only $20,000. Within a year, the buyers had tripled the price of water in Latin America's poorest country, and to ensure their monopoly, written a codicil into their contract with the state that legally prohibited Bolivians from collecting rainwater for personal use. Massive street protests in 2001 led the government to cancel the contract. In 2004, Argentina's President Nestor Kirchner defied foreign donors by refusing to allow a 37% hike in electricity rates to the two Spanish-based conglomerates, Edesur and Edenor, that had purchased the rights to the utility in 1997. Kirchner argued that Argentine consumers could not afford the increase, and the utility, which had already increased rates by more than 25% in 1999, did not need one. Brazil's privatization of its utility in the 1990s led to a 65% rate hike for consumers in that country, and Peru's electrical rates increased by a factor of 14 between 1992 and 2002. The cost of electricity in California has increased by 56% since the government deregulated the industry in 1998. In Baltimore, electricity rates have increased by 77%. The main utility company in Illinois, ComEd, pushed through a rate increase of 26% in January 2007, despite record profits the previous year. State officials in the United States said they were expecting record numbers of utility cutoffs in 2008, and in many cases eclipsing the record set the previous year. In South Africa, Eskom implemented cost recovery measures in 1996, in which the price for each kilowatt of electricity is set according to how much the utility spends to provide it, said Jacob Maroga, the utility's executive director of distribution. He said that Soweto's electricity problems started when the boycotts of the 1890s bankrupted the apartheid-controlled municipal government, which purchased electricity and resold it to residents. When Eskom began handling the accounts directly, it spent about $75 million in capital improvements and wrote off nearly $37.5 million in household debts. The idea is that we would do all the improvements and then the residents would start living up to their commitments. But we still recover only about 50 to 55% of the costs for the electricity we sell, Maroga said. There are clearly customers who don't have the capacity to pay. But there is also this culture of non-payment in Soweto, where customers can afford to pay, but they prioritize other consumptive spending. We need to deal with that. Because Eskom sells electricity at discounted bulk rates, affluent municipalities in mostly white suburbs buy electricity and resell it to customers for roughly 30% less than what it costs Soweto's consumers. For the biggest users of electricity, industrial sites such as steel plants and coal mines, the rate for each kilowatt is roughly 1/10 the rate for a household in Soweto. Patrick Bond, professor of public management at the University of Witwatersrand and co-director of the Municipal Services Project, acknowledges that it is expensive to provide electricity to the poor, who use little electricity and don't generate enough tax revenues to enable their municipal government to buy it in bulk, which results in duplicate costs for equipment, administration, and labor. But he said that Eskom could largely resolve the debt problem in Soweto by charging big industries a few cents more for each kilowatt of electricity, subsidizing a cheaper flat rate for poor customers. Eskom has a rate structure that economically makes sense, Bond says, but socially it makes no sense. Their structure is good for the northern suburbanites, but we'd like to see a structure that is good for everyone. That means smaller profit margins in the short term, but a healthier society in the long term. South African municipalities have auctioned off more than a dozen water plants, including that of Johannesburg, the nation's largest city, which has a utility district that includes Soweto and which entered into a partnership with the French transnational Suez and its subsidiaries in 2001. Suez's history of raising prices did not bode well for poor residents, especially since the new utility inherited an apartheid-era white elephant. A white elephant means something that's not worth very much, known as the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. This $8 billion scheme to build 6 new dams in the water-rich country of Lesotho, which is completely surrounded by South Africa, had already caused the cost of water in Johannesburg to nearly triple since the ANC came to power, and many residents in the township of Alexandra complained that they could no longer afford to pay their bills. Conceived by the apartheid government, the project was supported by the World Bank and other international lenders, who sidestepped international sanctions to finance the deal in 1986. The ANC, then in exile, denounced the arrangement at the time, saying that it strengthened apartheid. But after the ANC took office in 1994, party leaders decided to plow ahead. The first of the 6 dams, the tallest on the continent, was completed in 1998. Developers expect to build the remaining 5 over the next 18 years. The project is partially financed by international loans that will be repaid by passing the cost on to consumers. A disproportionate share will be paid for by residents of Alexandra. All white suburbs, home to less than 1/10 of Africa's population, account for more than half of the country's residential water use. But since these communities can take advantage of discounted bulk rates, a household in Johannesburg's white suburbs can fill its swimming pool and water its garden at less than half the cost per liter paid by a family in Alexandra. Alexandra seems to be a black community. Unions, environmentalists, and community groups have appealed to the government to cancel the Lesotho Dam project and repair the apartheid-era infrastructure instead. Blacks here are in effect paying for their oppression twice, first with blood, then with cash. We don't need the water from the dams, says Sam Moiloa, a conservation activist who lives in Alexandra with his wife and 2 children. We lose half of our available water through leaks. We should just fix the leaks, and our government can use that money they're spending on dams for the rich to improve our standard of living. So far, such protests have not swayed ANC officials, who say that making utilities profitable is critical to South Africa's competitiveness at a time when foreign investment is badly needed. There's a lot of polemics around this issue. Polemics is political talk, said Mike Muller, the Director General of South Africa's Department of Water and Forestry. But the truth is that operating costs have to be recaptured, and there is no way to sustain public services. Now I'll stop that part.